to change the mood a little bit. All right, I'm going to start with a fact. According to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation's 252,480 domestic violence cases were reported from 2010 to 2012. I started this work well before I ever saw any statistics regarding this, but it really kind of reinstilled in my mind this work is important, and it's very important for our community. My name is Lola. I would like to introduce to you my photographic study of domestic violence, in particular how that affects the psyche, specifically with the nightmares that occur afterwards. So I'd like to first start out with introducing you to an artist who really inspired me, and of course there's Richard Lou there. Two years ago, I met Don Gregorio Anton. He was a visiting artist here at the University of Memphis. At the time, I was focusing thoroughly on vintage fashion photography, so my work was completely different. I showed him my fashion, and I showed him my fine arts. Well, at the time, it was only my sketchbook. So I showed him both of these things, and he said, Kaya, the fashion is great, but anybody can shoot fashion. This work is in your sketchbook you haven't made yet. This is much more personal, it's much more important, and I really think that this is a direction you need to at least explore. So that's kind of what opened that door officially for me. So I'd like to show you a little bit of his work. His work has a kind of dreamlike haze, and he employs a lot of self-portraiture, so it has influenced me quite a bit. So as I mentioned before, sketching is a huge part of my process. It's common for me to sketch something out months in advance. I'm still shooting stuff that I've sketched about a year and a half ago. As you can see, I'll take pages and pages of notes. I'll redo sketches over and over until I have exactly what I want to photograph set in stone. So Purging of the Past Part 2 steps away from the literal experiences and kind of goes back into the residual effects on the psyche, again with the nightmares and the feelings of isolation that a victim might experience after enduring these types of things. These two images are dreams of drowning. So I present concepts of death, of drowning, and of bondage. And these were also the first two images that kind of got me on the road of photographing in a kind of surrealistic aesthetic. Rose Rape was from a dream that I had quite some time ago. Dreams, of course, are intangible and they're up to interpretation, but for me this is an image that kind of touches on how beautiful sexuality can be, but how tainted and painful a victim's sexuality can be. These next two images do not have titles, but this is a presentation of basically a prey and predator kind of dynamic. In this image, the body of my model is overwhelmed with cockroaches, and for me it's really important for me to basically present it in a way that's pleasing to look at, but it's also deeply disturbing. So I feel like that's kind of a natural look at what that relationship is for me. Some of you may recognize this reference. This is called The Kiss, and it is a depiction of René Magritte's The Kiss. It was impossible for me to leave this image out after starting to create imagery that talked about the isolation experience between family members and in relationships. This is a still from a 3-minute film that I did a while back. In the video, there is essentially this demonic character, as you see here, and he's turned to his side and he's purging chains from his mouth. This was kind of from a time where I first began to think about, well, what is my victimizer thinking now? What was his background? why did he do what he did? Is he experiencing regret? Those kind of thoughts that took me my entire life to come to, you know. So 23 years later, I'm finally starting to think about like where that all came from and be a little bit more forgiving. And that is in the installation. Now these next two images are self-portraits, and this depicts self-mutilation. A lot of people in response to this mentioned how much more calm it was compared to the other imagery. And it was important for me to do that because during this time in my life, self-mutilation was kind of my reaction. It was the thing that brought me peace. It was the thing that brought me serenity. So I wanted to make sure to kind of give that sense of peace and solitude in the two images. So I've now given you some details on Purging of the Past, Part 2. I thank you for your attendance tonight. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask afterwards. The installation is downstairs, of course, and we highly suggest that you check that out.